it's like this polarity of greatness and wholeness that like it pops up for me. And like I feel that's some of like your experience or like some of your story, like that's what it resembles for me. It's like wanting greatness and then going for greatness, and then like, oh, like that's cool, but like actually what about wholeness? um and I'm not sure if you could have both, like, or like if you have to, you sacrifice some wholeness for greatness, like what we deem greatness, at least like how we what we consider greatness. Like when
Right.
I think about greatness, the example I like to give is like the three Mikes, the Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, like those, people consider those greats, like those are three greats in their respective fields, whether it's basketball, boxing, or singing. And then you look at their lives and it's just like, whoa, like a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of like imbalances, um you know and that, I don't know if that's always the case, like from my understanding, like LeBron's like a very balanced or healthy kind of guy. I don't know him personally, but yeah, that I'm like also curious about that, like that relationship between greatness and wholeness, because I feel like that would come up a lot in me. And even like you saying, oh, maybe I could have tried a little more, because I think about people that I know that were also pursuing rap, and like one person in particular I know actually made it fairly far with it, and I'm like, well, maybe he was just like more extreme with it. He was just like, yo, I don't care. This is what I'm doing. I don't care how much I suffer. I don't care how many relationships I have to go, cut off. I don't care how many friends I have to cipher through. Like I'm making it. And like, I don't know if like, oh, I just didn't have the will, the courage, or whatever it was, or I was too comfortable. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Because I don't want to like spin it like, oh, I just realized that life is suffering and that I didn't really want, the sour grapes thing. But like
Yeah.
I go back and forth with that, like,
I do the
oh,
same thing, man, because, you know, when I think about opera, for example, it's like I had messed up my voice a little bit and done some things, but it's like, honestly, I was scared of the uncertainty. I was scared. I didn't quite, it's like, if I'm really being honest, it's like I could easily, that's what I said in the beginning about stories. You know, it's like whenever something happens, we don't even know why things happen. Things happen, and then after the fact, we give them reasons. You know, I think that's pretty interesting. But there are so many reasons why something happens. It's actually infinite. We can't possibly grasp it. So we construct stories like this is why this happened. Here's this. I was scared, and then this. Maybe I want something else. It's just a bunch of. It's really just a bunch of conceptualizations, right? Um, and and I think that one can see it both ways. Like, oh, it's like the other day I was like thinking about um, you know, quitting on something, and I was like, oh, I realized, like, you know what? I get frustrated after I fail, and I want to move on, because I'm scared. I'm scared of really being vulnerable like that, or there's something that's going on. My second grade teacher told my mom something similar, but and I know that's there. So it's like that's why I don't judge people like you know let's say someone like Michael Jordan or someone that's really successful at something. Oh well, they're just spiritually undeveloped and blah 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 blah. So they're just going after whatever. But yeah, maybe that's there, but also there are things about them that are really admirable. Like, wow, that guy has insane persistence. Like, he has a lot of maybe the ability to be, which I think is actually, you mentioned something that I've always kind of admired in people. Like, hey, this is what I like to do. I'm going to do this, you know, whether I become majorly successful at it or whether I just become mediocre and always struggle, it's like, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and that's it. You know, that there's something admirable about that. You know, um that someone makes a decision and commits. You know, that there's something admirable there. You know, and maybe the person, you know, and it's like, because we're all just very, very different, and ultimately I think one needs to accept themselves for actually what they are now. And I bring it back to Peter Ralston. He has a video on YouTube, and he's like, if you want to change, do one thing. And the one thing he mentioned is completely be as you are. Like, if you want to get better, get so honest, like really be as you are. If you're scared, be scared. You know, if you're don't try to change it. You know, don't try to change it. Be what you are. And I really, that's something that I kind of, as a person that was always like on the, okay, I want to explore, I want to see how I can get better, blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, I had to do that. Like, oh, can I just really just be where I am right now completely? You know, just be as I am and accept it. Really accept it. Because something happens there. It's like, no, I want to, no, you got to accept it. And there's a stillness that happens there. You know, a real stillness that happens in just accepting reality as it presents itself now, without trying to change anything. And I mean, really doing it. Really doing it. And you know what I found? This is my experience. And maybe this is another story, but it's like, the more I can do that, the more I can face my relative life issues with more honesty, power, and effectiveness. And just be honest with my life, you know? And when you talk about greatness and wholeness, it's like, greatness without wholeness is a very, first of all, greatness is very relative. You know, I think you've got to be really honest with yourself and do what, you know, and go from there. But see, for me, wholeness really includes a healthy ego, you know, a really healthy way of interacting with other people and what I want to accomplish, and, you know, things I want to do with my life, you know, and how I want to build it. Like, that's part of wholeness. So yes, if I think if one just goes after it in maybe like a purely spiral dynamic, stage orange, whatever type of a way, and it's like, well, I just want to be the best and I want to push everybody down, you know, or whatever, that's going to get really bad. But it's like, it's about being good so that you can do good, and find, and by healthily expressing something, find where you fit in with the whole, right? So you see, that's where I feel like the greatness, and or what meant for the greatness and the wholeness intermixes. And I think that that's where I've seen people that, you know, seem to be living happy lives are able to find a place like that. And it might take a lot of work, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, several things came up. Like, one of them was, oh, it's hard to have a healthy ego, you know, like when you're trying to be great. And I guess maybe Mike Tyson's an extreme example, but I bring him up also because he has the similarity of Toad, which I kind of
Yeah,
want to go into.
yeah,
The other thing is, I've heard this before, and there's something about it that kind of resonates. Like, oh, it's more important to be good than it is to be great. Like, there seems like there's something different about goodness and greatness, at least how I conceptualize it. And then also, kind of the other parallels that I see between wholeness is like the whole, and then greatness is like the part, right? It's like I'm gonna kind of say no to everything else so I can get really good at this one thing, so I could become great at this one thing. And then what was the other piece that I was looking for? The other piece is like, oh, becoming a specialist or being a generalist. Like, being a generalist is kind of more taking a holistic frame. It's like, oh, I'm actually interested in everything, and I kind of want to be good at, I want to have like all these different tools. And then when you become a specialist, um, you kind of, you cut things off, you make a decision, you make a commitment, you sacrifice things.
yeah,
And I think we need both, but I do think that, and this is when we were talking about what greatness is, I think our society and our culture really, it's more impressed with the specialist, and it pays the specialist better, and like that's where everything, like kind of all the attention goes. And like I think there's definitely something important about leaning into that polarity of being the specialist, playing, like stepping into a strong role of playing a certain part. But then I do feel like our society kind of neglects the more whole, more generalist, holistic kind of
yeah.